Okay, welcome everybody, and must say this is impressive to see such enthusiasm, a great turn up. Thanks very much for coming out tonight to take part in our launching of the Fremantle Indonesia Race and Rally for 2025. I'm Steve Parkinson. If I haven't met some of you, I hope I do meet you soon, and I hope we can enjoy sailing to Indonesia and our time together up there. It'll be lots of fun. We'd just like to start by showing a short video which has been produced by Nate and crew from Expedition Drenched about our planned event. So I'd like to introduce tonight's presenters, starting with an apology. Indeed, our event director, Mike Giles, is an apology for tonight. However, Mike has got a good excuse because he's currently bringing Robbie and Phil's yacht Condili back from Singapore so they can go in the event next year.
Yay!
So I've introduced myself, and this is the order of speakers tonight. Bill Henson is our Deputy Race Director, and Bill will be talking about the building blocks that we've got for the event to date. Ian Whitehead is also on the organising committee, and Ian will be talking about how we get out of Australia, and after having done that, how we get back into Australia, having gone to Indonesia, and a few things around that. Gordon Baird, also a member of the organising committee. Gordon is going to talk to us about cruising opportunities having arrived in Indonesia. I'd just like to go through some brief history here of the Indonesian event, Fremantle to Indonesia. As it says there, we've been to Bali 9 times, Lombok twice, so that's 11 times for the race and rally to Indonesia. And indeed, we were planning to go again in 2020, however, it had to be cancelled because of COVID. So then we got the great idea the next year of going to Exmouth. 2021 was a great success, so we followed it up 2 years later by going to Exmouth a second time. And now we come to planning for next year. Indonesia we are planning, and that will be the 12th time the club has planned a race and rally to Indonesia. So at this stage I'd like to hand over to Bill Henson to continue with some of the building blocks to achieving this. Thank you, Bill.
Just to introduce myself, I'm Bill Henson. I'm going to really focus on 3 different topics.
The first is this slide, which is talking about where we are in terms of getting the fundamentals in place. Secondly, speaking to the race boats which are in the room or not in the room, talk a little bit about the race side of it. Gordon's going to cover the cruising side of it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits of being part of an organised event. And I do know that for some of the free-spirited cruisers, taking part in an organised event seems a bit sort of counterintuitive. So I will try to explain what the costs are and what the benefits are of being part of an organised event. Just in terms of the fundamentals, so really we need four things in place to be able to get this event to happen. The first, of course, is getting support from the board here. That's in dark green because that's solidly achieved. But as you would expect, the board have imposed a couple of conditions. And the first one of those, of course, is that they want assurance that we can run this as a safe event. Now, of course, we have a good track record of doing that, so we're confident we can achieve it, but obviously that's the first criteria. The second criteria is that the event should be cost neutral to the rest of the club. And the rationale behind that is look, it's members' money that the club has, and it's unreasonable to expect other members to subsidise people who want to go sailing to Indonesia. So that is the sort of financial criteria. The second part is Indonesian clearance. I put in as light green because we're sort of halfway there. So we have received an assurance from the Indonesian consulate that we can do our arrival clearance at Labuan Bajo, which is Komodo National Park. Now that is not a regular port of entry, so they have said that in principle they are willing to relocate staff there for this event. So that's a really important component. The second bit, and this is actually the more difficult part rather than the Indonesian part, is getting out of Australia fairly easy, getting back into Australia a little more challenging. Ian will go through this in more detail, but basically we've got a plan B, which is a bit clunky, but it will work, and I'm guessing that Condili will be doing plan B when they come back in. But we're also working on plan A, which is to reinstate proper clearance up in the north, looking like at the moment either Dampier or possibly Port Hedland. And the last thing which we need, and this sort of goes back to a viable event, is we need some participants. And we've run the economics on 25 boats, and assuming zero sponsorship and the entry fees, and what I would call a bare bones event, we can break even on 25 boats. So I guess if there's a purpose here tonight, it's to convince you to sign up. Not only obviously to get us a break-even event, but there's a bit of a chicken and egg here. The more boats we can get, the better lobbying power we have with government, both here and in Indonesia. And secondly, if we can get a decent fleet of boats, we've then got an attractive proposition to attract sponsorship. So we're not chasing sponsorship yet, we're trying to get the event off the ground. But again, having boats actually registered really helps them from that point of view. Just go through this for it. Oh, sorry, going the wrong way here. Just what sort of weather could we get? Now, this is a screenshot taken from about a week or so ago. Basically, in the northern part of the course, so basically north of Northwest Cape, in typical conditions, we should get a southeast trade wind. Very reliable, probably blowing 10 or 15 knots, sometimes from the east, sometimes more from the southeast, but should give magic sailing conditions once we get to Northwest Cape. Between here and Northwest Cape, I guess as the last few days have shown, can be a bit changeable. For some reason, it seems that the start of May is often the time we get the first winter fronts starting to come through. Normally, obviously not as strong as the one we've just had, but the first half, 750 miles up to Northwest Cape, yeah, it'll be very much dependent on the weather pattern. Just now to put this event in context, Of course, everybody compares it to Sydney Hobart, which sort of crawls in at 630 miles. Of course, on the east coast there, they do run a couple of races. They've run, well, sorry, unfortunately it's been postponed to Noumea, but that takes them up to just under 1,100. They ran one to Auckland, that's nearly 1,300. Of course, the big one is Melbourne-Osaka at 5,500 miles, but that is only open to double-handed sailors. So we're claiming Fremantle to Indonesia as the longest race and rally. Melbourne-Osaka doesn't have any rally components, race only. But look, there's 1,500 miles. It's a challenging sail. And it's pretty much the same challenge whether you're a race boat or whether you're a rally boat. So it is no question that it is a significant distance. Race records for those who focused on going fast. Of course, everybody would know that it was Siska back in 1981 that set the race record. It was actually Siska 5, so Raleigh had 5 different boats called Siska. I can't guarantee this photo is Siska 5, but it sort of looks about right to me. When they set that record back in 1981, so that was only 2 years after this club opened at this site and the marina was built and everything. Only 2 years later, the club was racing to Bali. They managed to hold that record for 30 years. And it wasn't until the TP52 limit was able to slightly lower that. If you look at the average speed, 9.02 to 9.11, so not really smashing that record. But I would point out that the first, the Siska was 69 foot long, so a big boat. Of course, Super Sled, 90 foot long carbon fibre canting keel, and they managed to slightly lower the record down to, increase the record up to over 10 knots. But sort of, if I put that in comparison, so the first 3 graphs on the left are the average speeds to Bali, and so you can see it crept up very slowly over a pace of time. And then I've put up a couple of recent ones. So this is the last Geraldton race in 2023 and the Cape Naturalist in 2024. Both those records held by Crush, 13.6 knots to Geraldton. I think it's about 13.1 to Cape Naturalist and back. Now, I know sailing for 1,500 miles is a different proposition than sailing for 200 miles, but it just shows how much faster boats have become. If Crush could hold that speed, they'd be in Indonesia in 4.5 days. So, I guess for the race boats here, or anybody who's thinking about entering the race, this is actually, of all the race records around in West Australia, I would say this is probably the softest one in terms of probably the least challenging to beat. Now, just talking about being part of an organised event, I'll be honest, there are some costs associated with being part of an organised event. As I've mentioned, to make this self-funding, we do need to charge a significant entry fee, and then there is a crew fee on top of that. The second thing, and of course, no surprise to the race boats, there's obviously some fairly tough safety requirements. In the case of race, there are no exceptions. It's going to be to the letter. We don't have any flexibility in that regard. So in terms of the rally boats, it is actually a Fremantle's own decision, but to be able to convince the board we've got a safe event, Rally will be running to Cat 2 by and large. However, we do have some flexibility for what we call alternative arrangements. So if you have some equipment on board that achieves the same effect as the standard requirements, then that can be considered. The other cost down there is, look, there has been record of some liver damage after these events, so I've put that in as a cost as well. The benefits, look, I think obviously probably the largest benefit is the satellite tracking. So not only will every boat have a satellite tracker, More importantly, there will be 24 hours a day monitoring of those trackers. And we've had instances in the past where boats have suddenly stopped going forward, or they start going round in circles, and race control sort of watches for a little while and then starts making some inquiries. So you do have that continuous support, and obviously in the event of an emergency, that would be referred to AMSA or Water Police or whoever. Race control would coordinate that. Another area where they can help is medical incidents. We will have a connection with, I think we go to an emergency department in one of the local hospitals. So if you have a medical issue on the boat and you need somebody to talk to, race control can help make that connection. Lastly, if you have a breakdown or some incident on the boat, race control may be able to give you some advice. They may be able to get somebody to carry parts up to Indonesia. You know, the rescue services, you know, their sole focus is saving life. They're not interested in saving boats. So anyway, that's another benefit. I mentioned clearance into Indonesia. Frankly, you couldn't go to Labuan Bajo without this organised event. Coming back in, Border Force and biosecurity, yeah, it's tough, but again, part of an organised event, we will have talks by Border Force and talks by biosecurity, giving a list of what to do and what not to do. We might be able to do some pre-departure checking, just to help smooth the process through. And lastly, the biggest benefit, frankly, is sharing the experience of other people within the club. So a lot of people here have got bits of different experience, and tapping into that. So frankly, that's why we're a club. And lastly, of course, I've got to mention again, there'll be a post-event celebration. So the bottom line is, look, we've got the building blocks in place, but what we need is participation. To use the old voting adage, you know, vote early or enter early, enter often. We do need those entries. Better to do it sooner. The entry, the registration fee will be fully refundable up until the time when we start incurring some costs. But yeah, I do encourage you to sign up. Thank you.
Okay, for those who don't know me, I'm Ian Whitehead, and my role in this is to talk a little bit about some of the more technical details, such as where are we going. This is really a bird's eye view of the course. You can see that there's a couple of stats there. So Fremantle to Komodo finish line, we calculate out at 1,510 nautical miles, so just a shade over it. For those of you who are familiar with Bali races previously, it's really just slightly longer than the Bali race. Of course, the other interesting thing is, Bill touched on this, is just the sailing angle. So whereas I think Northwest Cape to Bali was about 6 degrees, to Sumba, this is the island which you have to go around just slightly there, is about 22 degrees. So, but still, with easterly and southeasterly trade winds, it's still going to be great reaching once you get past Northwest Cape. So that's the course. When you get there, there is an island shown on this map, which is quite a large island there. And you come in behind that, it's probably about 40 degrees once you get round the corner there. And Sumba provides a bit of protection as well too, so mind you, you do want a bit of breeze still. What we've chosen as a finish line is, this is really just the entrance to Komodo National Park here. So this area right around here is the Komodo National Park, UNESCO World Heritage. And this, the distance there is roughly 12 or so miles, so it's quite open. Easy to cross even day or night. The reason for finishing there is once you start getting into, there's a couple of ways, but this channel here, there's, as people know, been to Indonesia, there'll be fishing nets, a bit of debris, and also the Indonesian through flow, which is coming through here, plus a bit of tide, so that makes it a little bit more exciting. But once you get across the finishing line, at this stage we're suggesting it's about 30 miles to the anchorage, and it's really a daylight trip to do that. As you said, just to avoid the debris or nets, just things can get in the way there. So even though it's a national park, they still allow fishing in there for, I think, historical reasons, etc. And you might notice the odd Phoenician sort of cruising around as well. But so that's the layout. Of course, at a later stage, just mention that this whole area is fantastic cruising ground right down into here around Rinka. And Padar Island, which is the one you see on all the photos, and it's on the 50,000 rupiah note, is this rather large extinct volcanic rock there. Great views from the top, so you'll see that as you go past. A little bit about the event requirements, not too much detail here, but we've put together a notice of race and rally, so it's now one document. So we saved a bit of paper, we saved a few trees, put in one document. I think it works, I think it's readable. There'll be sections applying to the race, sections applying to the rally, and then combined sections, because in fact there is a lot of combined stuff. Again, that will be on the website. I think it should be up there tomorrow. We were loading it up they were loading up this afternoon, so it should be there to read. As Bill noted, register early to receive your updates and assist us with the planning for the event. Start midday, 10th of May, and you've got to be there for the presentation on the 23rd, which is just under 2 weeks. There will actually be, as we had for Exmouth, an early start for those who, for the rally boats who want to take, I think they might take a little bit longer, so that's included in notice of race as well. A few criteria around that.
Ruben has it that that's a week. Is that about
yes, we've allowed up to a week, yeah. So there's a bit to organise with that, obviously trackers and race coverage as well, but we'll get through the details on that. So, of course, the sooner we know about that sort of thing as well, there's a fair bit of time to organise that. We covered the race categories, so obviously the race Cat 1, Australian Sailing Cat 1, the rally, Cat 2. One thing we just haven't quite settled the stability criteria. Without boring you with the details, there's a number of factors that go into that. As Bill has mentioned, we want the race to be safe, but also we don't want it to be unduly onerous in terms of what the stability criteria are, so there's a bit to work through that. Give us a couple of weeks and we should have that settled. A couple of the other sort of long lead items to think about. Australian vessel registration, you will need that. And I understand there's a couple of categories, you can either be permanent or temporary. I think most people go for permanent, but it can take a bit of time to get that in place. I know from our own experience it requires you to source bill of sale documents and proof, those sorts of things for the boat. It's all right if you just bought your brand new boat, you can probably get through that fairly quickly, but when you've got to go through some owners, it might take a bit of work, and it takes a bit of time on the bureaucracy side as well. So think about getting that done soonish, because it can take some time, and you won't be able to go anywhere or come back in unless you've got that. Crew experience and training, obviously that's critical. There's certain constraints on, or certain requirements for crew to have previous experience, but also people have got to plan and get things organised. So it's important to sort of start thinking about the crew. And there are some requirements for training, such as sea search and survival, which we actually, there's some criteria there for a certain number of crew, because we recognise that it's valuable for everyone really on the boat. That's what we're encouraging. Qualifying passage, standard stuff. The race boats, I think the West Coaster this year may qualify as it's 150 nautical miles, 24 hours, so that might be one qualifying passage. But the other thing we're thinking of doing too is, particularly for the rally boats, is organising a sort of, it's almost like a cruising company, but something where we can a number of boats go out together, we can monitor them, and we're looking at that. So it's sort of like a mini race, a mini rally if you like. So that's something we're planning on, give a bit of structure to it. And I think it helps people in the rally division, so just sharing the knowledge and the experience, etc. there. It's going to be sat phone race, no HF. I'll just say that again, sat phone, no HF. So that's one of the things you need to think about as well, if you haven't already got that. I'm not sure if Starlink cuts it, but if you want to have that as well. The other thing is AIS, I should say that's a transponder AIS, so it's got to transmit and receive, and that's mandatory for the race and rally. But it is also mandatory when you get to Indonesia, because that's the way the Indonesian authorities keep track of you. And that's why they've relaxed over the years, I believe, some of the requirements of checking in at ports and that sort of thing. And they can see you on AIS, and last year we had no problems, we just left it on, and we weren't really disturbed, they knew where we were. One other thing is perhaps think about insurance. That's different for everyone, but that can take a bit of time to organise as well. Some of this has been covered, Bill. We just
Is it Mike?
I didn't realise there was music to this. Leaving Australia and re-entering Indonesia and leaving Indonesia, there's a bit of process to go through. So with immigration, customs, biosecurity. So I'll talk a bit more about biosecurity because I know there's a few people interested there. But we plan on engaging, as well as giving some advice, as when we get through what sort of procedures you have to go through. We also plan on engaging agents, both Australian agents and Indonesian agents, to make the transit as seamless as possible, if you like. And that may also, because we do it in bulk, may actually reduce some of the costs. So that's a benefit there. As we progress throughout the planning, we'll provide more information as that goes. Okay, I know that Bill's mentioned, and I know a few of you mentioned to me, biosecurity is a hot topic. This slide, first of all, I should say that I've used the technical language up there, which is a biosecurity first point of entry for non-commercial vessels. So a typical bureaucratic mouthful. That means how do you get your yacht back into Australia through biosecurity, basically. But that is the entry. So what happened in around about 2019, they changed legislation, came into place. It sort of caught everyone a bit unawares because, of course, after 19 we had COVID and no one was really travelling anywhere. So it didn't really sort of surface until a couple of years later. And we've done a bit of work on this. Now, I guess these are so I just also draw the comparison here with it. This is biosecurity, not border force. So in fact, if it wasn't for biosecurity, there could be a number of ports around WA which border force would be happy to clear in, but biosecurity is a limiting factor. You may recall there was probably over half a dozen ports on WA that used to be able to get clearance with biosecurity, such as Dampier, Carnarvon, around Albany, etc. But of course, we're missing a bit up here. That's the issue. The East Coast has got its act together. There's various reasons for all that, but in WA it'll wait a while. But there is hope. So what we've done is, as a club, we had sort of Plan A and Plan B on this. Plan A, we actually engaged with both state and federal ministers on, so that's ports and biosecurity. And transport, actually, federal transport, and raise this issue. Turns out we're not alone. The encouraging thing is there's some people in the agricultural side of things, the cruise ship side of things, which are also suffering from this lack of ports to actually clear into. Now, the encouraging fact just very recently is that the State Minister for Ports, David Michael's come back and he's directed the Department of Transport to manage the task of putting in another port or a couple of ports that you can clear into biosecurity. So that's probably Dampier or maybe Port Hedland, the new marina there, the Spurbank marina, which looks quite good actually. I suppose it should be for 187 million. So DOT, and we've engaged with DOT. So the idea is, because we've got real experience here in managing biosecurity entry, we can help DOT with that. They seem to be quite interested in what we do, and so the only thing is that may take some time. We've got a year, but it may take some time. So we have Plan B, and Plan B is what they call a non-first point of entry, where there's more obligation on the skipper to with biosecurity restrictions, etc. Effectively, what happens is the vessel or the crew get partially cleared in, say at Dampier, with a final clearance at Fremantle Sailing Club. In between times, when you're travelling down, there's some time constraints. You have to go through a few procedures on port entry. You can't stop on the way. The benefit is that's currently in use. There have been yachts who've come through that process, and Condilly will experience it in a couple of weeks. The other thing is we're engaged and have been with, for some time with biosecurity on that as well, to try and get a standard procedure for us all, make it easier, make sure everything's clear as to how we go about it. So there's oops. So any questions on biosecurity, I'm happy to answer them after the session, but look, it's positive. It's a work in progress, but we do see that ideally, if we get a formal port up and running in time, it'd be great, but if not, we've got a fallback position. Okay.
My name's Gordon Baird. I'm in the cruising section, Secretary of the cruising section. I seem to have found a knack for organising cruises this year, and Bill and Steve approached me to have a look at what we could do in Indonesia, and it kind of fits my agenda as well. I can't wait to get up there. So I'm here to talk a bit about the opportunities. So Indonesia is an amazing country. I've done a fair bit of travel onshore. I've never sailed there, but it's 18,000 islands, 2,400 nautical miles wide and 1,100 nautical miles from top to bottom. It's the third biggest democracy in the world. It's just massive and a very exciting place for us to go sailing. There are many individual cultures, there are different languages, there are different religions, there are different foods, just a wonderful place. I thought we should have some photos. We've had all this other stuff. So, help me in the name of this island, Pada. I can never say it right. Pada. Beautiful looking place. I can't wait to climb that and have that view. It's fantastic. And the Komodo dragon. Just to give you a feel for the scale, the centre of the circle there is where we'll go after the race and where the presentation will happen. And you can see the 50 nautical miles gets you plenty of islands, and I'll zoom in a second. 100 nautical miles gets you even more. There's an aerial view probably showing about 20 or 30 nautical miles from our anchorage, which is the sort of red area over there, Labuan Bajo. So lots to do. I'm thinking we could spend 5 or 10 days just in the Komodo area, depending on what people are interested in doing. Now, just to give you a feel for what we're thinking, the idea is to, after the presentation dinner, just to take the opportunity to go cruising. I think we're going to end up with something like a 3-month window before we can come back into Australia in the organised way, although people are welcome to stay on longer or travel further afield if they want, which gives us plenty of cruising time. So after the presentation, what we think is let's set up a loose itinerary. We can spend 5 or so days in the local area, and then build some options for a cruise either to the east or to the west for another 10 days. Yachts would be free to come and go as they please. It's not going to be a route march, no 80 nautical mile days, nice and easy day sailing, just exploring, interacting with local communities where we can, going for walks, just taking in the beauty of this place. We do want to have a look at ways we can engage with the community. I know for Exmouth we had students at the Exmouth school adopting yachts on using the yellow brick trackers, which I thought was a great initiative. There are those sorts of things that I'd like to explore. Something that's worked really well in the cruises I've been involved in this year is just good old WhatsApp. I think the Abrolhos WhatsApp's gone quiet now. Who was on the WhatsApp for the Abrolhos? Put your hand up. There's a few there. And who was on the WhatsApp for the Quindalup cruise? Put your hand up. Yeah, so heaps of people have experienced it. Just a great casual way to talk about everything. Who's travelling to Perth, or who's doing this, or who's going where, or what's the weather like tomorrow? I haven't seen a forecast. My phone's not working, or whatever. And that's worked really well. Just in terms of coordinating movements, whose boat's got the party on the back, or which beach are we going to for the sundowner? All those logistical things that are really important when you're cruising. In terms of references, and this is very new to me, I think I've been involved for a week, but so far there's plenty to dream about on YouTube, as I think many of you will know. There are lots of vlogs that cover Indonesia on YouTube. But there is a cruising guide to Indonesia by a guy named Andy Scott, which looks like that. And there's a link in this presentation. I think this presentation will go onto the website, so you can have a look. You can download that document, although I did hear there may be another version coming. It sounds like it's not worth waiting for, though. It could be another year. But it looks great. It's kind of similar to our cruising guide that Kim Placker's running for maintaining for us. But you can download it online, I think for about $48 US. But you can download sections, or you can buy a full pack with a courtesy flag, an Indonesian courtesy flag, a hard copy, a soft copy, and a file with all the anchorage coordinates in it as well. So if you're serious about heading up there and doing a bit of cruising, then this would be a good reference. Over to you, Steve.
Okay, thanks to all our presenters. I know there's a good number of people in the room here who've raced and rallied or cruised up to Indonesia, some quite recently as well. So we'd like to open it up to the floor for questions and comments indeed tonight, and I'll ask the presenters if they would come to the front, and we'll have a bit of a session of Q&A if people would like to do that. Thank you. So if you'd just like to raise a hand if you've got, there's one over here. Thank you if you'd kick it off.
On a cruising permit, do we get an extended period within Indonesian waters? A month, 2 months?
Yeah, look, the old Kate system is gone, so that's one of the places that's got much easier. You have to do an online registration 24 hours before you arrive, and you can keep a boat in Indonesia for 3 years before you incur any tax liability. So basically, the other issue is visas, and there's a selection of visas available which can get you certainly 6 months, and you can get multiple entries. So, but the old cruising permit thing is basically gone.
Yeah, Jim, thank you.
Is there any, 2 questions at the same time, is there any question or any debate or discussion about getting Broome as an entry point? Is one thing, and the other is, assuming where we're going to this, obviously it's going to be difficult to clear in, easy to clear in because that's all organized. Is clearing out from there going to work as well? And what kind of timeline will clearing in have?
Yeah, Jim, we're just still working, sorry, just only speaking on the Indonesian side of it, we're engaged with through the consulate here to try and nail down some of the details, but we have asked for clearing out at Labuan Bajo as well. Given they've got to relocate people, I suspect they're not going to want them sitting around for a long period of time. There may be a window for clearing out, but of course, if you're going for a cruise, there's other ports around where you can do departure. Basically, you can go back to Bali or Lombok, which is a downwind sail, or you can go a bit further west and you can go to Kapung. Sorry, I think Kapang. Kapang is the sort of more western one. So there are some other options, but yeah, we understand it would be convenient to go out of LB, so we've asked for that.
Yeah, I know they're doing some work. They've got, I think they're actually going ahead now with the new jetty at Broome that is commercial, and it certainly would be a preference for yachts. I know some people have in the past cleared in at Broome, but given the tides, the lack of protection, etc., I think the initial focus, I would hope the initial focus is really on Dampier and this new Spallbank Marina, which actually on paper looks pretty good. So rather than Broome at this stage. So Broome, I think, will become a biosecurity point of entry for other reasons, such as the tourist trade, for farming, getting goods in and out as well there. So I think that's what they're planning, but and which may then as a fallback, it might be an option for us as well.
Thanks. Further questions? Yeah, Anita.
Yeah, Steve, I know this is still a work in progress. Do we have any indication at the moment of what our entry fees and cost are likely to be?
Yes, Anita, they're in the notice of race and rally, so there's been a little bit of inflation since the last event, so it'll be $1,000 per boat, plus $200 per crew person. So it's a way of sort of, to be honest, you know, the bigger boats can pay a little bit more if they've got more crew, or more specifically, hopefully their crew will kick the can as well. So we're working at the moment on zero sponsorship. I don't know whether we'll be reducing those numbers, but we may be expanding the scope, if you like, if we can get if we can attract sponsorship. So as I said, we're going to start off with a sort of bare bones design, see if we can get some enough boats together to make it look attractive to a sponsor, and then use the sponsor's money for a bigger party when we get there.
Yeah, thanks. I think with the registration, the deposits we're asking is $250 for a deposit for a registration. Is that correct?
Yes, to register it's $250. There will be some information on the website which explains that basically if the club hasn't incurred any costs, then that would be fully refundable. But at a certain point in time, we do start incurring costs, and therefore we would have to make some deduction to cover those the share of those costs. But the idea is to try, you know, well, firstly we want to encourage people to register, and secondly, we're not about penalising people. We all recognise change of circumstances, lots of things can happen, so we're not in the business of trying to penalise people who decide at the end of the day they can't make it. So yeah, that's the fee structure.
Yeah, over there.
Is there any differences between the cost for boats that are non-Fremantle Sailing Club members?
Yes, they have to pay more at the bar here, but
I don't mind that.
no, we haven't gotten to that stage yet. But yeah, it's an interesting thought. Yeah.
Is there consideration for people to we're members at the Mandurah Fishing Club, but we are seriously considering about joining, or would like to. Has there been thought given to yachts belonging to other clubs?
No, absolutely. The event is open to everybody, so long as they're part of a club which is registered, recognised club. But absolutely. So we will be promoting this event, particularly to WA boats. We did try in one of the previous events to try to get some boats over from the East Coast, but to be honest, it's just too far for them. We found we didn't get any boats interested, so the focus will be very much WA. We have discussed in principle, we'll have some arrangements for boats which come from a fair distance away, like Albany. So you may get some free time on the hard stand, you may get some free berthing, recognising that people have got to move their boats here early. They probably want to get work done on them. So we're trying to support, I guess, people from more remote places.
Phil, thanks.
I understand sat phone being a good form of communication, but having just sailed through Indonesia with Starlink, I just can't tell you how good it is. It is complete satellite communications the whole time. You've got your WhatsApp, all of your telephone, internet communications, and you've got full access to predict wind, and it's really fantastic. I would just thoroughly recommend to anybody thinking of sailing that area to get Starlink on board.
Thanks very much for that first-hand experience, Phil. Thanks. Anybody else with questions or comments? Yeah, thank you.
What is the mooring arrangements in Indonesia? Is that anchor or marina or?
Look, there's no marina at Labuan Bajo. The only marina, anyway, so, but however, there is a large safe mooring area which is protected from the prevailing trade winds. As part of their efforts to upgrade Labuan Bajo as more a tourist destination, they've moved all the heavy shipping to a new port. So a new port is being built on the north side of the island. So the only traffic through there is either the ferries or the charter boats. I've stayed in there a couple of years ago and we had no problem getting a mooring. Other people have gone a little bit further away from town and anchored, probably sort of 15 metres on sand, mud, so good, very good holding. So, but yes, we're in discussions because we understand some people would like to have a mooring, but obviously I guess they also want to know it's a mooring which is sort of properly attached as well. So, so we will look and see if we can coordinate something on that. But there's certainly good safe anchoring, and the trade winds, they are the trade winds, so they blow 90% of the time from the southeast. So it's good shelter.
Is that a possible project? You know, we fund a number of moorings for Labuan Bajo.
We may need some divers to go and check on the waves.
I wouldn't be diving.
Any more questions? Doug, thank you.
Hi. As per Exmouth, are you going to have a container to take up extraneous gear? Is that being considered, or is that?
Look, to be honest, Doug, we haven't looked at it yet. I'm going to say, I guess we're trying to get the basic event happening. I think it'll be difficult. He's probably putting it in a diplomatic term. So, Frank, I'm going to say, because you've got whole issues with importation, and I'm sure there is a way of getting containers to Flores, but there's certainly no direct service from anywhere here. So there'd be stuff would have to be transshipped.
I think that was the aim of the question. Is there an end point for getting a container?
Sorry, to be honest, we haven't looked into that at this stage. Okay. But I wouldn't. Unfortunately, I don't think people would assume that we would sort of need to find somebody with a large rally boat and persuade them to bring stuff up. Phil.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think Mike Giles did help with a container for Exmouth, and he's tried in previous Barleys. I think he commented that the timeliness of it is a problem because you know, the container might end up in Jakarta or something and still be there sometime after you've left. And that happened with the Clippers here, of course, where their work container was stuck in Singapore when the Clipper boats were here and didn't get here till they left. So there's those sort of issues, I think. But good question, Doug. Thank you. We've got further questions or comments from anybody up the back there. Yeah, Sue. Thank you.
Yeah, good question, Sue. Look, there's a service from Bali, from Denpasar. So you take a puddle jumper from Denpasar. It'll be a little plane of, I don't know, 20-seater or something like that. They run multiple times a day, and they come into what is now grandly called Komodo International Airport. No, it's the airport's been upgraded. I don't know if there's anybody flying direct into there yet, but it's probably a 45-minute flight from Denpasar. There's accommodation in town, lots of mostly smaller hotels or lodging. There is a big, brand new, like multi-story, sort of 7-8-story, I don't know what it is, like a Ritz-Carlton type hotel there, which is a possible place for us to have our results presentation. So there's certainly accommodation around, yeah. But it's people say it's like Bali was 20 years ago, so it's not nowhere as developed as Bali, but plenty of options.
Well, just an observation base, if accommodation right in town is pretty much as you've described, but it's also a mecca for diving. And a very short distance out of town, there are some really, really lovely resorts and accommodation that you can fit into that does the daily shuttles into town and stuff.
Thanks, Anita. Robbie.
Just a point about visas. While our yachts will get three-year permits and we can go in with 6-month visas, we need to be aware, as many of us have found out, including you and us in 2017, and us this last time, the minute you leave Indonesia, your personal visa is cancelled. So when you come back in again, you have to apply. So unless you know you're not leaving for 6 months, to pay to get the 6-month visa is just a waste of money, because you lose it the minute you leave. And if your whole crew doesn't leave, you're out of sync, so you're spending every 30 days going somewhere to try and renew each other.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Robbie. I personally got caught out of this. You leave Indonesia, you don't notice when they put a stamp in your passport which says cancelled until you're at Heathrow Airport an hour before the flight's due to depart, and they won't let you on the plane. So there's lots of, but the visa situation in Indonesia is quite fluid, so they are trying to promote marine, what they would call marine tourism. So they are trying to encourage it. That's why they've changed the rules for boats. But the visa situation hasn't quite caught up with it. So yeah, you really want to get a multiple entry visa. You can get I forgot what it's called, a retirement visa, which if you are willing to, if you guarantee you've got a certain amount of money, you can basically get a 5-year visa. So there are lots of options. But yeah, you've really got to, absolutely got to read the fine print, because yeah, it's not a good experience not getting back in.
No.
Okay, any final comments or questions before we wind up and move to the bar for further bintang, hopefully? Any last minute? Just before I move to that last slide, I'd just like to thank our CEO here at the club, Craig Evans. He's a member of the organising committee, and he's supported us with some real, professional advice on behalf of the club, which is very much appreciated. And we've had substantial staff support for this evening, particularly Alex, Scotty, who's even here tonight with us, and Kat here in functions to help put this together. And indeed the event webpage will be live tomorrow with the ability to register tomorrow. So that's appreciate a great lot of work that's gone on there behind the scenes. And also down in our galley with Michael, who put together Indonesian Special and Special Beer as well. So I guess just to finish up what's next, we would like you to register, please. It helps us all, and we will help by giving more information out to people who register. 12 months to go, so I hope all or most of you are going. So start planning, because some things, as was mentioned tonight, do take longer than others, so good idea to work out your priorities and get on with boat work. Research is available there. That Andy Scott book is recommended. There's a copy from our club library if you would like to have a look at the back, together with the charts that are there. And that's, as Gordon said, is available as an e-book, and it's also available from Charlton Map Shop in Fremantle. So this will be really good value from Ian and Lynn, who have recently returned in fourth dimension from the very area that we're talking about. So you should try and attend that talk. That's going to be gold next month, sorry. July, there will be a further information session, so we'll move on from this point in July. And I think that's enough for now. Please come and join for a bintang or a beverage at the bar, and come and approach any of us that have been here tonight speaking with questions. We would like to help you in any way we can. So please just contact us. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, he's got. Have you stopped?